Welcome
Hi.
to this podcast.
To this podcast that we still haven't named.
Yes. John, first question. Do you have a name for our podcast?
Do I have a name for your podcast?
Yeah.
No, not off the top of my head. I was not planning on
Off the top
coming
of my
up with
head.
names.
That's probably already the name of a podcast, but off the top of my head would be a
Yeah.
great name for like a spitballing kind of contest. Or
Is that what this is
podcast.
going to be? Is this going to be a spitballing
Probably.
podcast?
Well, we don't really have much of a plan yet, so
Yeah.
yeah.
But hi, everyone. I'm Gabby.
Oh yeah, I'm Justin.
And I'm John.
Yes. John is our guest for today.
I like that we all have different cameras to look at, so we all look like startled, like we're looking at someone we didn't know was watching us as we.
Oh, I've never thought to look at like a specific camera. I've never thought
Well, you
about
get all
that.
three of them.
Yeah, I guess I do.
John and I kind of have our like specific cameras. Like that camera doesn't even know I exist.
Wow.
I'm just going to give it the side eye the entire time.
Yeah.
It's like SNL.
So, John, you are our guest.
Yes.
Tell people who you are.
I'm John. Gosh, I'm really bad at talking about myself. I volunteer here a lot. I would say I do tech. I've helped with worship in the past. I do drums. I play a little bit of guitar, electric guitar. I did take piano lessons at one point, but that's all out the window. So
I like how
um,
tell us about yourself turns into all the instruments you play.
yes,
Almost a full band.
yeah.
Almost.
I almost. Well, I mean, acoustic, electric, and drums could be a full band.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought of recording yourself playing all the different instruments and then
I have. I don't have the type of equipment for that, unfortunately.
can you sing?
Can I sing? Off and on.
What's your favorite song to sing?
I don't think I have a favorite song to sing.
What's the last song that you sang?
Probably Where the Wild Things Are.
Okay,
by Luke Combs.
you should have known where this line of questioning was going.
No, I am not going to sing for you, Justin.
Give the people what they want.
No. Trust me, they don't want it.
Okay, well, to help us all get to know each other more and for you to get to know us more, Gabby has a question for us.
Yeah. Okay. What is one oddly specific museum that you would visit if it existed? I have my answer.
Oh, yeah, you
if
can
I
start.
need to go
Let's
Yeah,
do
first.
it.
go
Yes,
ahead.
you do.
Okay. I would go to a museum dedicated to pop culture from the early 2000s to the mid 2010s. That's the museum I would go to.
Wow. So you're high school.
Yeah.
I guess that'd be like elementary to middle school for you, right? Or
Mhm.
did you say
Yeah,
early
yeah.
2000s to?
Early 2000s, like,
Oh, that's just your entire
Starting-
life.
yeah.
Wow.
2000s pop culture is so fascinating to me. It's so funny.
It is. It's very amusing to
It's-
look back on the day and age when I was born
Mm.
and think about how people were acting back then. It's
When were
very
you born?
amusing. 2006.
2006. Okay. I graduated in high school in 2007.
Does that make you feel old yet?
I've felt old for a while, for a really long time.
Yeah, wait,
What-
you got 2007?
Yeah. I'm
Wow.
35.
I always
From high
forget
school?
how much older you are than me.
Yeah. I don't know what that says about me.
I don't
I
know.
just act really young.
Or maybe I think I'm more mature than I actually am.
One of the two.
Yeah.
It's
Meet in the
gotta be
middle.
one of the two, yeah.
Oddly specific museum. See, I picked some of these questions and I didn't even think about them.
I would say mine is, you're going to find this out about me, but music is my life. So I would say the one that I would think of is probably like a museum where it's just like all the different instruments from all the different famous musicians.
That would be cool.
Yeah,
That would
I think
be.
that would be a lot of fun to visit and just be able to see and maybe even play some of those really
Yeah.
popular instruments.
What's the most like iconic one? Like when you think of a musician with like their iconic instrument, what do you think of? Who do you think of?
I mean, like Johnny Cash is very well known for playing his acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
And the way he held his guitar was very unique as well. So I really like his whole thing.
Yeah.
Can you grab that music stand behind you
No,
and show
I
us how he held his
cannot.
How did he hold his
I
guitar?
should have brought my guitar. I knew I should have.
Okay, Stevie, can you put a picture up? We're going to ask Stevie to do stuff every week and he's never going to do it.
He's never going to do it.
Can you put a picture up of Johnny Cash holding his guitar? What's unique about, doesn't everyone hold a guitar the same way?
No. So the way he held his guitar was often with the guitar neck angled down. So he's almost kind of holding it like an assault rifle.
That's what I was thinking. That's
Wow.
Great analogy. Okay, my oddly specific museum would be like a 2-part museum, and it would include photographs or renditions of the first time that every animal killed a human being and was killed by a human being. So like the first time a duck ever killed a human and the first time a human ever killed a duck.
Have ducks ever
I
killed?
don't know. That's why I would go to
humans?
it. Can you imagine walking through a museum and it's like we have a representation of every time an animal first killed a human?
That would actually be really
It'd be
neat.
fascinating.
That would be.
'Cause you'd
I
be
would
like-
I would
You'd be
definitely.
like, what, a
visit
cricket
that
killed
museum.
someone? It'd be like, yes, we found a cricket crawled in someone's mouth when they're, I don't know. It'd probably make you
That
paranoid.
probably.
but
Yeah. Maybe I would.
Can you imagine like knowing
the
the like year and the situation that happened? And be like, that poor person that died from,
Yeah.
I don't know, a flamingo. I'm sure it's killed someone at some I don't know. If that museum exists, tell me and I will patron it.
I don't think that exists.
I don't even know how you would have like I'm thinking about the first time like a lion killed a human or like a bear killed a human.
Yeah.
Was probably long before humans were like keeping records.
Yep.
of
I'm
those kinds
imagining
of
this is
things.
like a magical question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
mean, like you're not
I'm
going to
such a
gather
party
all of
pooper.
the popular artists, musical
Yeah.
instruments all in one place because those are collectible items.
Or even if it was like a historian, the first recorded, and we like painted a picture of that era. And I don't know.
That'd be neat.
That'd be
Fair
my
enough.
oddly specific museum.
All right. Now I'm gonna have to go Google if a duck has ever killed a human.
I would
I know that's the
think
thing
so.
is I'd want
I
to
would
Google
think
through
so.
every animal, but it would just be so cool. And especially if they organized it by size of animal. Like start big because you expect it. Like T-Rex,
Yeah.
cool, got that. But then like as you start getting smaller, you're just like, no way.
Yeah.
No. It's just, yeah. And then maybe, okay,
I mean, like
I'll
I'm
end it
sure
with-
ants have killed tons of people,
oh, that definitely.
like
But
bullet ants and crap. Oh my gosh.
both of the sides of the museum though, because there's also the one of the first time a human killed. So like you do that one in the opposite
Oh.
direction. So that ends with the T-Rex, like the first time
Yeah.
a human killed the T-Rex. But at the end of both museums, it has like the undefeated of like animals that have never
The
been killed.
undefeated.
But then that's like undefeated animals that have never been killed. But then you also have like the sad animals that have never killed a human.
I don't know. I don't know
So
that
it's
those
this-
would be considered sad animals. I think that those would be considered animals that I like.
At this museum, it would be considered sad. So like one side is the losing. We've spent too much time on this museum, but it would be really cool. Or if someone wants to make a fake version of that in VR and send me a link. I don't even know how I'd access it because I don't own VR, but
Wow.
if you do the work, that'd be cool.
That would be
Okay.
really neat.
The call has
The
been
call.
Yeah,
made.
the cost of
I'm
it.
working on it, Justin. Working on it.
All right, next we need to find a way to segue. How do people do transitions on podcasts? Do they just like cut and fix?
No, don't play
Oh.
with the soundboard.
give us a soundboard sound.
Okay.
You didn't press this one. You should press that one.
This one?
Yeah.
I think this is the cricket one. I pressed it last time. Oh
Nope,
no,
it is
the-
not.
Ah, and now it's time for student questions with John Nyquist. I don't know. We probably need names for segments, don't we?
Yeah.
Or should we find a way to unawkwardly segue into questions? John, did you
Why
bring
are you
that-
asking me
that-
these
I don't know.
questions? You
Because we're
have
still learning what we're doing.
yeah, but you have twice the experience that I do because you've been in 2 podcast episodes
Oh.
that you've run, and I've been in 1
Got
that
us
I
there.
haven't even run.
That's true. I have twice the experience of you.
At
in
least
podcasts.
twice.
And I've been on Cabin Conversations like 3 times.
Oh,
So
Whoa.
3
yeah.
times.
I'm a pro.
Nice.
I literally get paid to go on podcasts. That's
Oh
cool.
my gosh, that's awesome.
I'm a literal professional. Okay. But that's that weird. That was a whole tangent about if you call yourself a professional because you get paid to do it, but you work at a church, you're kind of a professional of like a
Like
lot
a
of things.
semi-professional.
Well, yeah, because like your job covers so many random things that
You're a professional alien invasion player.
exactly. Like I'm not really getting paid to do a podcast.
He's a professional game designer.
Exactly. I
Oh,
design
wow.
games. I designed so many games. Okay. Question. Okay, so as we did last week, if you watched that, you all students sent in questions that we recorded and didn't answer because we ran out of time. So we saved those, and we're going to spend time answering some of those, and we're going to let the guest bring a question. So we're going to start with our questions,
Okay.
and then you can
Putting
ask
me
us
in the hot
ours.
seat.
Yeah.
All right.
But I didn't pick a question. Did you pick a question?
I was gonna pick a question after you picked a question.
Wow,
so didn't pick
I
the same
came prepared
question.
more than you guys did.
You did.
This is
Yeah.
kind of
You
sad.
did. Well done. Well done.
Good thing we haven't done the challenges yet.
Yeah.
We could just do my question first, but
Sure. Why don't we go with your question first?
my question was How would you say is the best way to start like a habit of reading the Bible and praying every day? Like start the habit, specific time, just get it done. Because I know that's something that I've struggled with in the past is like I'll get a good rhythm going and then I'll eventually just pitter out. And then I'll get a new rhythm going and it just keeps pittering out. So I'm still working on it.
Put your phone in downtime. That's like
yeah.
my number one tip is whenever you decide you want to start reading your Bible, like whether you want to do it in the morning, you want to do it in the evening, wherever you have time in your day that you're like, this is the time that I'm going to dedicate. Ask someone in your life, a parent, a friend, to literally put a screen time passcode in your phone so your phone is on downtime during that time, or your laptop or your iPad or whatever you have that's like your biggest number one thing that's going to distract you from actually reading your Bible and praying. Put some boundaries up for yourself so it's not a distraction. And that is at least one big hurdle that you've removed for yourself. So
sure.
I'd answer that in a slightly different way to go, accept that you will fail and you'll have to create a new rhythm eventually.
Sure.
Because even if you have the best willpower and the best plan, especially for teenagers, your lives change so quickly. And then like you're going to graduate soon and your life will change again. It'll keep changing. And so every time your life changes, you have to reinvent whatever rhythm you have. So get really good at creating a rhythm.
Sure.
And sticking to it the best you can.
Yeah.
But I think it's examining your life and picking like what time in your day do you have control over? Because I think if you try putting it into a part of your day where you don't have control, you're going to run into trouble.
That could be the issue for me because like I try to find the time when I do have control over my day. Well, I don't really actually. It's just like what I've always heard is like it's always good to just do it right away in the morning, get it over with. And then that's like, it's the first thing you do every morning. And that's what I've heard from a bunch of different people. But what I find is that my mornings end up getting really crazy oftentimes because, it depends on like, I work some days. And on the days that I work, I'm getting up at like 5 or 5:30 in the morning because I have to drive to work and be to work by 7. And then other times I have like classes at 9 or I'm like getting up to help my dad with something with the farm work, stuff like that.
That's even a good example of if your week doesn't have a cadence, it's really hard to do every day at the same time. So it's hard. Why does it sound weird?
I don't know.
Oh, that thing's on.
Oh.
Yeah.
Another encouragement I would give is, and this kind of depends on what your life looks like, but leaving your Bible out and open someplace that you're going to walk past it a bunch or somewhere that you sit often, then it's just there as an open invitation all the time, is just a really helpful reminder. If you're not able to set aside like X amount of time, every day, if you just kind of always have your Bible on hand as an open invitation, then you're not having to make time necessarily. You can find the time in just kind of the little moments that you have.
Sure.
But some of you will be in school and that's not always a viable option. But
and that's why starting with prayer before Bible can actually be helpful because there's less barriers. So I think when people try to start Bible reading, they think like, okay, I'll do 15, 20, 30 minutes. And then what happens is you go to do it. And sometimes you're like, I don't have time to read 15. Like it's going to be exhausting or I don't have the energy or whatever, where prayer is sometimes more relaxing or less work.
Yeah.
So, what have you found is helpful in your own life?
I would say the thing that I want to really start doing that has worked pretty well for me when I remember to is every morning I'll basically spend probably 15 to 30 minutes in my bed just laying there. And typically what I'm trying to do is either fall back asleep or like just rest because that's like in bed is like the only time I get to rest because every time I get up it's like one thing after the other, just keep going.
Yep.
So for me, what I'll typically try to do when I remember to is I'll just take that time and I'll think about what my day is going to look like. This is actually stuff that I learned from you. You kind of told me what to you kind of told me this stuff. Just like think about what you're going to do throughout the day. Pray about how you can be Christ to others through that whole situation. And I have added in just like prayer for all the different things that are happening in my life and the lives of the people around me and just that type of stuff. So, I mean, it's been good when I remember to, but I really need to start getting a reminder somehow in there.
Thank you. That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I didn't spend any time looking at the next question. All right, let's go with this one. This is an interesting one. What does surrendering your life mean, and how do you do that?
Sheesh. That's a deep question. I can't. I would say surrendering my life, probably what I should do in this situation, I would say is for surrendering my life is surrendering the times when I do have downtime, like in my day, which happens every now and then, right? It'll happen sporadically depending on how my day is running. And I would say that surrendering those times instead of to give myself leisure time to myself, surrendering those times to actually think about God, maybe read the Bible during those times and pray during those times.
Cool. So you're looking at it as a like practical everyday type of thing.
Yeah. I would say surrendering
Cool.
your life to Christ looks like surrendering your happiness for Christ.
Yeah.
It's a really good
Which
answer.
doesn't mean you necessarily can't be happy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't think about that. But I think that a lot of joy can be gained just from actively seeking out serving God instead of making yourself happy.
Yeah. Yeah. And that bleeds into not even just your free time then, but every decision,
Yes.
really, and
Yeah.
how you use all
Mhm.
your time.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I think about surrendering your life. Yeah. An easy and good place to start is with our free time. And maybe not easy. Maybe our free time is honestly maybe sometimes the hardest thing to
Yeah.
surrender. But how that then bleeds into how you use your time at school, how you do your schoolwork, how you interact with your friends, how you interact with your family. I think probably surrendering your life. I'm imagining that this person, whoever asked this, is thinking about this in the context of when we talk about when people make the decision to first follow Jesus. That's usually the language that gets used is surrendering your life. So how do you do that? Well, I think it's like what John just said. It's moment by moment that you just start. You pick a moment and you say, how can I give this moment to Jesus instead of myself? And that builds and builds and grows over your life.
Yeah. But I would think even like at the starting that whole process, right? Surrendering your life to Christ is, of course, accepting God into your heart, praying that prayer and just making the conscious decision to, from that day onward, to just surrender all moments to Christ. I think that's probably what that looks like.
Yeah, you're right. It's kind of funny. So I was about to say surrendering your life is like a phrase Christians use synonymous with accept Christ into your heart or pray a prayer. I think the older I've gotten, I think when I was younger, I definitely hated all those phrases. Like they bothered me. And the older I get, the more I realize Christians throughout time keep coming up with helpful phrases at a time to explain what it means to follow Jesus. And so they're going to come up with whatever phrases at some point in time, surrendering your life made sense. To me, it seems kind of weird, like a surrender flag. We just don't talk about surrender a lot anymore. It seems like an old, I don't know, like pirate ships raising a white flag or something. So I don't know what era it came about. But
it was definitely the French.
There's the French. They were so helpful to us, John. Be kind. But it's an analogy. They're all analogies to try to say, like, we want to follow Jesus. And here's a phrase. And accept Jesus into your heart is another one to go. Let Jesus be a part of your life and your decisions and your emotions. But we at some point make a decision to do it. And then we spend the rest of our lives continuing to make that decision. And that's what's cool, because that's what you're talking about is every day.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
One down.
Well, two down. You answered
down.
your own
Oh, yeah,
question.
you're
The
right.
trick is that Gabby and I aren't going to teach anything, and we're just going to let you talk.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it okay? Can I throw you kind of a dark one?
I like dark. The darker, the better.
Okay. Is it okay to be afraid of death?
I wouldn't say that's dark.
Okay.
What?
I would say it's a
Someone's
natural...
listening to this at like 11:50 at night. Like, not now.
It's definitely not the darkest I've heard, but I would say, yeah, it's a natural, I would think it's a natural human feeling to be afraid of death.
Mm-hmm.
To be afraid because, I mean, while we as Christians believe that there's something beyond death, it's still, I would say it's still natural that we don't know, right? There's that little part of us that's the earthly part of us that's saying, but what if your entire life is meaningless to what you believe? What if it doesn't matter? And like that, just thinking like, in my mind, I know this is something I've experienced where that part of me is telling me like, there's nothing past death. Death is it. And then
Is that comforting or terrifying?
it's terrifying.
Mhm.
And I would say that's why I personally have found myself afraid of death in the past. But yeah.
I think that question is interesting because you said it's natural. And whenever somebody says something's natural, I go back to Adam and Eve and the creation and how things should be. So when I see, is it okay to be afraid of death? I kind of think of it in two ways of like, am I okay if I'm afraid of death? Almost like a personal, like, am I a bad Christian or am I a bad person if I'm afraid of death? And then the other end side of it is like, is it right to be afraid of death?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the answers are kind of different depending on which one of those it is. If the question is it okay? Like, am I okay as a person if I'm afraid of death? I think so. I think Jesus, like, it was going to be a unique death, but Jesus in the garden is seemingly pretty afraid of what's about to happen. So if Jesus is allowed to be crying tears of blood, I think we're allowed to be afraid.
Yeah.
But then I think the other side of it is that's not how it should be. Shouldn't fear death. Like Adam and Eve never should have had to die.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when I fear death, I think often of that's not how God ever designed it. He never made humans to have to worry. Like the trust that Adam and Eve were supposed to have for God in the beginning was supposed to be it. We weren't supposed to have to trust that when we die, everything will be fine.
Yeah. And kind of, I was thinking about this as you were talking. I went to No Regrets, the men's conference on Saturday, and one of the things that I heard there is like, and I've heard it before, but it just kind of brought me back to that moment where it says in the Bible, "Do not have fear," over like 365 times throughout the entire Bible. It says,
why is
"Fear
everyone
not,"
so afraid?
Right? So like, I think the hard part there is like, yeah, it's okay to have the fear, but it's how you address the fear. God says, "Fear not." The angels say, "Fear not," when they're talking to the shepherds. Jesus says, "Fear not," when the disciples are going through hard times. But I think the hard part there is taking it in the context of fear is a natural thing, right? Animals have it, we have it, but it's how you address that fear and how you can use God to have him take that fear out of your life.
Well, what's interesting is if you think of, I'm going to jump to Genesis. Isn't that their first reaction? I always like to check myself because I don't know if any of you have this. I feel like I have a good memory of scripture, but then I'm always like, I might be wrong at how I'm remembering this.
When they hide, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, they were afraid of God. But I think they were also ashamed.
He answered, "I heard you in the garden and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid."
Yeah, like the first reaction is fear after the fall, after sin, which is just interesting. Like shame and then fear.
Hmm.
So they hide and they're afraid. Like, oh, that doesn't talk about the human condition.
Yeah.
See, that's dark.
When I think about this question, I think one of the most exciting parts of being a Christian is that we follow Jesus, who defeated death. So the scariest, biggest kind of unknown that the earth kind of throws at us, we get to look at and say, actually, I know that doesn't have ultimate power and that doesn't have final say because Jesus defeated death. He died, but that was actually just the doorway into everlasting life. We sing a song here that says something to that effect, don't we? Something about death being just a doorway.
That sounds really true. I was thinking of Death Where's Your Sting, like talking about Paul saying that.
I was thinking about Death Was Arrested.
Yeah.
That song.
We sing a lot of songs, it turns out, about death.
Well, it's almost like our religion.
Yeah,
it
is.
Jesus defeated death.
As do most religions.
I feel like that's almost like the agnostic group of people who stepped away from the church when they look at Christianity again, not from a like culturally Christian lens, but when they go look at what are Christians' thoughts about things. I feel like sometimes that's their reaction is like Christians meddle, or it's like pretty, I don't know, it's like a pretty dark, thought-provoking religion. Because it does, like it centers around a man who faced the most terrifying thing for us to say that it can't beat us now.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I also think being afraid of, like, I think death in general is kind of a fun connector to non-believers. So like some of my like agnostic or atheist friends, I would always sit and talk with them and tell them like, one of the fun parts is we won't know until we die. Like we don't get to know who's right. Like we can believe and we can have faith, we can trust. But one day we're all going to know who's right. And I don't know. It's so, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at when I first answered this question, I think.
Yep. We don't get to know.
We don't really know. There's still like, like the holy part of us believes that this is not the end. Death is not the end. But the earthly part of us is like, I'll see it. I'll believe it when I see it kind of thing.
And that's where certainty and trust are different things.
Yeah.
Like no one can know that death isn't whatever's on the next side of death because we don't get to go there until we die. And so we have to trust.
Yeah.
Which is helpful for me when I have doubts because I just think of death. Yeah, like there's no way I can be certain about that. I have to trust. So sorry for all of you who are late at night worrying now about what's going to happen after you die. Talk to Jesus.
You get to be with Jesus.
Yes. Call a friend right now if you need to. But wow, should we do one more since that was a kind of.
Sorry, yeah, I didn't mean to end on. I thought it would end. I thought it wouldn't be a downer because it's like.
That's true. It shouldn't be.
We don't have to be afraid of death. Jesus defeated death.
That's
Isn't that so
That's
cool?
true.
Who else can say that? Who else other than Christians can say that?
Not many.
Anyway.
Yeah. We're really good at transitions.
That was nice. Ooh, here's a good one.
Oh, you're okay. You are throwing another one. Perfect.
John, what's your favorite Bible story?
What's my favorite
why?
Bible story? Oh, sheesh. I don't know that I have a favorite. I have a lot that I like. There's a lot that I think are super powerful. What's yours, Justin? Give me a moment.
I feel like I've been able to teach on a lot of my favorite ones. So I'm trying to think of one that I haven't taught on before that I really like. Gabby, what about you? Just keep passing it around.
Oh my gosh. I should have thought of this before I asked it. So that's on me. Let's see.
I have one. I do have one.
Go for it.
The story of Legion. I really liked the way, especially the way you painted it.
It's because that's my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an awesome story.
The way you painted it with like just the idea that there's this group of people that know that there's this guy who's dangerous and absolutely downright insane, right? And then they see this guy just show up on their shore, and then Legion comes along, and they're like, this is going to be funny. And then what happens is like Legion throws himself down on the ground and begs for Jesus' mercy. And I think that's just a really neat way to portray that story.
And it's helpful for me whenever I think of like evil in our world, because I don't think I bring that mental picture into our world often enough. Where when I see evil or when I see something wrong, I don't think, oh, if Jesus walks up to that, it's going to throw itself down at his feet and kneel like everything else will.
Yeah.
I get lost. It's a good story.
I don't know if this is my favorite Bible story, but I was reading it this morning, so it's at the top of my head. But the story of Joseph in Genesis, at the end of Genesis. And I was reading through it this morning and just noticing all the different connections and parallels between Joseph and then Jesus eventually. It was just even so striking to me this morning. I was reading, and Joseph, when he's put in charge of all of the food in all of Egypt, because there's this famine kind of throughout the whole world. And then what happens is the rest of the world has to come to Egypt to get food. And that just really struck me, that the rest of the world has to come to Joseph to get food, which they need for life. And then it's through Jesus that the rest of the world gets to come to Jesus for life, for new life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So I just noticed that this morning. I don't know if that's my favorite Bible story, but
That's cool.
It's a really powerful one.
Yeah, my first reaction was going to be my favorite Bible stories, whatever one I'm like researching at the time.
Yeah.
Because I feel like every story has these like little bits that are just, fascinating to read. I had one and then I lost it. Where'd it go? I don't remember.
I'll just start naming famous biblical
I
characters.
really ought to manufacture some cards that just say train of thought. I think you lost this.
Well, sometimes I do that where if I'm like want to say something, because I usually interject or interrupt people. And so I've been trying to do the habit of keeping something to write and write it down so I don't forget it, but don't interject.
Yeah.
And I didn't have anything to write with, so I forgot it.
You had your computer. Could have written it down in the search bar or a Google Doc.
I could have,
Yeah. Wow.
but I didn't.
It's the problem solver part of me.
It was meant to be
Sorry.
like a goof. Oh, no. This was the one. So this isn't my absolute favorite one, but this is one where I remember reading it like 4 or 5 years ago. And it's one I kind of knew, but it just stood out to me. And it's that, so David beats Goliath. And I don't know how you remember that story, but don't forget that he chops his head off at the end. Awesome. And so it ends with this like, I don't know, probably teenager, maybe young adult, like grabbing this giant sword and cutting off someone's head. And then flash forward like 10 years. And David is on the run. And he's running from Saul, and like plot point, he doesn't have a sword. So he goes into this random temple. And it's this whole story about him on the run. And he goes into a temple and he's like, I don't have a sword. Can you help me out? And they're like, oh, the only sword we have is Goliath's sword. And so he like goes in and they hand him this like giant sword. And it just reminds me of like every video game or epic legend. It's just super cool.
Yeah.
And then that's the sword he ends up as he's like running from Saul. Is Goliath's sword. I don't know.
It's really neat.
Want to know another interesting thing about that story? So in that story, when it's describing Goliath, it's talking about like all these bronze things that maybe you know this.
I might not. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know everything.
Okay. I don't know.
He is a nerd, but he doesn't know everything.
So it's talking about like all this bronze like armor essentially that he's wearing. And it's like using the word bronze over and over and over again. And the word bronze in Hebrew is really similar to the word for snake or like serpent. So essentially Goliath is being depicted as like a serpent, and then David
Interesting.
cuts off the head of the
crushes
serpent.
the head.
That's really
I
neat.
didn't know that. That's really
Isn't that
cool.
That is
interesting?
really cool.
I knew the word connection, but I didn't know that in relation to Goliath.
Mm.
It's fun. See, Bible study is really fun. There's like a level where I think that's the weird part is when you try to read the Bible, going back to your original question, is if you jump into it expecting like a really simple or like a comforting thing, you might get really disappointed. But if you jump into it expecting like a deep lore and mythology, even like a true mythology, but I think it lives up to what a mythology is, which is a giant story that we live by.
Yeah.
We've come to use the word myth as a fake story that we live by, but its original meaning is just a big story that you live by. And so if you go to the Bible expecting this like multi-layered, complex, deep story that you can dig into for the rest of your life, I think it's really cool.
That's a really neat take, because like I'm obsessed with like Greek myths and Roman myths and Norse myths and all that stuff. So I don't know why, but I never really thought about it like that. But it definitely would help get me excited about reading my Bible.
Yeah. Or how many students I meet that love like Star Wars or Marvel, like the lore.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like I think Star Wars and Marvel fans understand canon more than anyone else. I'm like, what is and isn't canon?
Yeah.
And like,
Just
if you
take Disney's stuff and just get rid of it.
think about
Hot
that,
take.
like Disney and canon is like the councils that we're deciding like what books. Like, it's not the same because they just arbitrarily decide, but the tension of that, of people being so upset or like caring so much.
Yeah.
And obviously not a one-to-one parallel, but it's helpful to remember that there's a whole world of books and study out there. That's really fun. We don't have a good end to this podcast. We have next week at youth group, which is a week. Again, we're filming Monday for Thursday. So it's after youth group this week.
Yeah. So come back to youth group and we'll talk about dating.
Yes.
We'll talk about some practicals.
Oh yeah, John, what's your number one tip for dating, just to set everybody up?
Shoot, I don't know. Communication is key. Setting boundaries and communication right away, I think, is really, really key. That's what I've found really helps me.
What's your top communication tip?
Having an understanding that if there's a problem that should be addressed but isn't being addressed, to address it as quickly and passively as possible. Diplomatically, I should say. Diplomatically.
So not like, hey, you suck at responding to my text.
Exactly, right? Instead, it's more like, I know you have a busy day, and I know that you don't always check your phone, but oftentimes I feel a little bit left out of your life because you're not responding to my texts, type thing.
Wow.
Amazing advice.
Yeah, write that line down for like tomorrow or someday in your life, because you will need it. That's a good line.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
Tip number two.
So come back next Wednesday. John's gonna
No.
All right. This has been the Unnamed Youth Podcast. Yeah. Last thing then. Do you have a name for us now that you've experienced what it is?
No, I still don't. Sorry.